Picture a room where live rounds are fired inches from a man's head, on purpose, by his own teammate. That's not an accident. That's Tuesday. This is Delta Force, and what happens inside their walls rarely makes it outside them. At Fort Liberty, tucked away from the parts of the base that show up on public tours, there's a structure most soldiers will never set foot in. It doesn't have a dramatic name on any official document. Unofficially, the men who train there call it the House of Horrors. And the name isn't for effect. Inside, the walls are lined with plywood and steel plating, built to absorb thousands of rounds without collapsing. The rooms are staged like something out of a nightmare scenario: a kitchen, a hallway, a cramped apartment bedroom. Except these aren't movie sets. They're rehearsal spaces for the exact moment a hostage situation goes loud. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. The hostages in these drills aren't mannequins. They're fellow operators. Real people, sitting in real chairs, with real bullets flying past them at close range. Not paintballs. Not rubber rounds. Live ammunition, fired by a teammate standing feet away. Stop and sit with that for a second. Somewhere in that building, a man is trusting his life to the muscle memory of the person next to him. Not hoping. Not assuming. Trusting, with data to back it up, because that trust was built round by round, rep by rep, for years. The tension in a room like that isn't hypothetical. One flinch, 1/2 second of hesitation, one shooter who trained sloppy on a bad week, and the consequences aren't theoretical either. This is precision under a kind of pressure that no shooting range in America can replicate, because the stakes are literally human. And yet, somehow, they do it. Not once. Not as some initiation stunt. Constantly, methodically, as part of an ongoing standard. That's the alleviation, if you can call it that, because the entire point of the House of Horrors isn't chaos. It's the opposite. It's certainty. Every drill is designed to strip away doubt until the shooter's hands do exactly what years of repetition train them to do, even when adrenaline is screaming at them to rush. The instructors don't measure success in close enough. A shot that's an inch off the intended target isn't a near miss. In a real hostage scenario, that inch is someone's spinal cord instead of a threat. So they train for surgical accuracy, under time pressure, under noise, under the psychological weight of firing next to a friend's face. What most people picture when they hear Special Forces training is grit, mud, pull-ups, screaming instructors. That's not wrong, but it's incomplete. This is different. This is a kind of controlled precision that looks almost boring from the outside, because true mastery rarely looks dramatic. It looks quiet. Repetitive. Almost clinical. And that's the revelation hiding inside the horror. The name of the building is a joke among the operators, a dark, dry kind of humor. Because by the time a Delta operator walks in there for a live-fire hostage drill, the actual horror isn't the bullets. It's the standard they're held to. Good enough doesn't survive in that room. This is the part of Delta Force that never makes it into recruitment ads or Hollywood scripts, not the explosions, but the discipline required to stand 3 feet from a colleague and pull a trigger with total confidence. If a channel like this, digging into details most people never hear about, is worth your time, sticking around and subscribing genuinely helps keep this kind of research going. Because the House of Horrors isn't where Delta Force is made. It's where it's tested. The men who walk through those doors already survived something far worse to even earn the right to stand in that room in the first place. And that selection process didn't happen on a base with air conditioning and scheduled meals. It happened alone, in the mountains, where nobody was there to catch a flinch, because out there was no teammate standing next to you at all. The forests of West Virginia don't look dangerous on a postcard. Rolling ridgelines, thick tree cover, the kind of landscape people drive hours to go hiking in on a Saturday. But for a small number of soldiers each year, those same woods become something closer to a psychological gauntlet than a hiking trail. There's no starting gun. No cheering. No clock on the wall counting down to a finish line, because there's no finish line, not one they're told about, anyway. A candidate is handed a rucksack loaded with dozens of pounds of gear, a rough set of coordinates, and almost nothing else. No exact map. No confirmed distance. No idea how long the walk is actually supposed to take. Imagine that for a second. Not knowing if you're 2 miles from done or 20. Not knowing if the pace you're keeping is enough, or already too slow. Every step becomes a negotiation with your own mind, because the body will keep moving long after it starts screaming to stop. The real battle is convincing it to. That uncertainty is the entire design. It's not an oversight. It's not a lack of planning by whoever built this course. The ambiguity is engineered, precisely because certainty is what makes suffering bearable. Take away the finish line, and you take away the thing most people lean on to survive hard things, the promise that it ends. Somewhere on that route, in the dark, alone, with a pack cutting into his shoulders and his legs no longer fully obeying him, a candidate hits a moment that has nothing to do with fitness. Plenty of physically strong men have quit exactly there. Because the mountain isn't testing muscle. It's testing what's left of a person once muscle stops being enough. This is the part almost nobody talks about honestly. The physical training that gets someone into the program, the running, the rucking, the years of preparation, none of that fully prepares a person for isolation. For hours of silence with no instructor barking encouragement, no teammate a few feet away, no external voice at all except the one in their own head, which by hour 15 or 20 isn't always kind. That's the identification worth sitting with. Most of us will never walk a mountain like that. But almost everyone knows what it feels like to face something with no clear end in sight, a hard season at work, a diagnosis, a loss, a stretch of life where the finish line simply isn't visible. The instinct is the same one those candidates fight in those woods, the desperate need to know when it stops. The instructors who designed this course understood something uncomfortable about human nature. A person who's told exactly how far they need to go will pace themselves accordingly, conserving energy, rationing effort, holding something back for the home stretch. Take that information away, and there's nothing left to ration. A candidate has to be willing to give everything, immediately, with no guarantee it's even close to enough. That's not cruelty for its own sake. It's a filter. Because in an actual operational environment, a hostage rescue, a raid, an extraction gone wrong, there's no finish line clearly marked either. There's no guarantee help arrives on schedule, no promise the mission ends when it's supposed to. The mountain isn't punishment. It's a rehearsal for uncertainty itself. Some candidates simply sit down. Not because their bodies gave out, but because their minds ran out of reasons to keep walking toward an unknown distance. Nobody comes to drag them back to camp in shame. There's no yelling instructor standing over them. Just a quiet acknowledgement that the mountain asked the question, and they answered it, one way or another. Others keep moving long after it stops making rational sense to. Not out of some superhuman toughness, but because somewhere in that walk, they stopped measuring the distance and started just putting one foot in front of the other, over and over, refusing to let the not knowing be the thing that decides the outcome. That's the hope hiding inside all that suffering, if it can be called that. Not the promise that it gets easier. It doesn't. But the discovery, for the small number who make it through, that self-sufficiency isn't something you're born with. It's something the mountain proves you already had, buried under assumptions about your own limits. Because that's really what's being tested out there. Not strength. Not speed. The ability to operate completely alone, with incomplete information, and still make sound decisions when no one is watching and no one is coming to help if it goes wrong. And that quality, the ability to function entirely alone, without support, without instruction, without anyone checking in, doesn't disappear once selection ends. It becomes the foundation for something even stranger. Because the same men who prove they can survive total isolation in a forest are later asked to do something almost opposite, disappear completely into a crowd of strangers, thousands of miles from home, without anyone ever suspecting who they really are. That's a different kind of solitude entirely. And it starts the moment they stop looking like soldiers at all. Here's an uncomfortable thought: the man standing next to you in line at a market overseas, the one with the beard, the local clothes, the tired eyes of someone who's lived there for months, you have no way of knowing. That's not a coincidence. That's the entire point. Most people carry a mental image of what a soldier looks like. Short hair, straight posture, a uniform that announces exactly what they are before they say a word. It's an image built by decades of movies, parades, recruitment posters. And for the vast majority of the military, that image holds up. Delta Force operators break it on purpose. Beards grow out for weeks, sometimes months. Hair goes untrimmed. The tactical gear gets swapped for whatever civilians in that specific region actually wear, not tactical-looking civilian clothes, but the real thing, sourced and worn until it looks lived in rather than costumed. This isn't about comfort or personal preference. It's a deliberate erasure of every visual marker that says military, because in the kind of work these operators do, being correctly identified isn't a minor risk. It's often the difference between a mission succeeding quietly and a mission ending in a firefight, or worse, never ending at all. So the training goes far beyond growing out a beard. Operators study the way people actually move in a given region, how they hold themselves, how they greet strangers, what draws attention and what doesn't. Because a perfect disguise still fails if the body underneath moves like it's used to standing at attention. This is where the phrase ghost earns its meaning inside the unit. Not ghosts in the sense of invisible, plenty of people see them every day. Ghosts in the sense that no one who sees them remembers seeing anything unusual at all. They're forgotten within seconds, which is precisely the goal. Memorable is the opposite of safe. Think about what that actually requires, psychologically. Every other branch of the military reinforces identity, rank, unit pride, uniform, insignia, a sense of belonging you can see on your own chest. Delta Force asks operators to let almost all of that go, at least outwardly, and operate as someone who officially isn't there at all, wearing another life like a second skin for weeks or months at a time. There's a cost to that most people don't consider. Maintaining a civilian identity so convincing that even trained observers don't question it means suppressing habits built over years of military conditioning, and doing it consistently, under pressure, with no one to check your work except the mission's outcome itself. That's the weight sitting underneath the beard and the borrowed clothes. It's not a costume they put on for a few hours. It's closer to living a second identity long enough that switching back becomes its own kind of adjustment, because eventually, the facade and the man wearing it start to blur, and figuring out where one ends and the other begins isn't always simple, even for the operator himself. If any of this has changed the way you picture what Special Forces actually means, the shooting rooms, the mountain, the men who vanish into crowds on purpose, that's exactly the kind of digging this channel exists to do, and subscribing helps make more of it possible. Because everything covered so far, the precision, the isolation, the disappearance, points to the same uncomfortable truth about this unit. The parts that make Delta Force the most effective are the same parts that make it almost impossible to see coming. In that video playing on your screen right now, it's about a unit almost nobody's ever heard of.